Good evening, everybody. I'm going to try to speed things up a bit. I know it's been a long evening, and I thank you all for your forbearance. I want to first thank Dean Thomas Ferris for the dynamic leadership that he's exhibited in bringing a lot of us alumni back to the institution. It's been a long time being away from the school, and I'm really proud to be a part of it once again, and honored to be here tonight. So I thank the school and the faculty for this great honor. I'm humbled as I look back over the 7 years of who else has won the award. One of the things I take away from tonight is I look at Bill's presentation and I look at the remarkable accomplishments of some of the fellow award recipients, is that the people that have succeeded are the people that have tapped into their passion. They have tapped into something that they find extraordinarily captivating. And I think those of us who have a chance to do it, regardless of whether it's in the field of cellular technology or antennas, or in my case, in the world of software and IT, to get up every morning and go to work and feel like you're playing is the greatest gift of all. So I feel very, very fortunate to have had the chance to do what I've done. So what I'd like to do just very quickly is talk about the classic entrepreneurial journey. Not just mine, but the journey of many others that I've had a chance to work with over the years. Students of mine, people whose boards I've had the privilege of serving on, people who I've mentored. And I hope their stories inspire you as much as they inspire me each and every day. And my hope is it might just give us a different perspective on what it might be like to take entrepreneurship to the next level here at Rutgers and at the School of Engineering. Just a show of hands, how many people in the room have been or are currently entrepreneurs today? People that are either running their own businesses, and I love it that Tom's hand is up, okay? Because quite frankly, to be an entrepreneur is not necessarily what you do, it's how you do it. It's the mindset you bring to the work that you have on your plate. So if we can go forward, please. So when I left here back in '83, Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard, two remarkable men, were running a company that bared their name. And in the very first year that Fortune magazine started their Most Admired Company in America award, Hewlett Packard was that company. And it was just a dream to go work for Bill and Dave. Those guys earned every accolade that had ever been given to them. They truly were remarkable engineers, remarkable business people, and they were remarkable entrepreneurs. And they built a phenomenal company. They were innovation machines. So I was very fortunate to have had the chance to go west and to rotate through Silicon Valley when Steve Jobs was just launching his first Mac computer, and when so many great names that we know today in history were making their mark on society. So yes, I did go west, and I had an amazing time. It was a very interesting time. So Bill showed us some of the very first IBM computers, and I was drawn to the next phase of disruptive innovation when Hewlett-Packard was bringing the microcomputer, literally the engineering workstation, very early versions of a workstation that had Unix on it, to compete against, at that time, the incumbent DEC that had disrupted IBM from the prior generation. And so HP was looking for newly minted mechanical engineers to help them compete with DEC in the world of mechanical CAD and electronic CAE. And we built an extraordinary multi-billion-dollar business very quickly and really became the new guard in computing. Next slide. So, you know, it was with some heaviness that I wound up leaving New Jersey, leaving the beautiful Jersey Shore, leaving my beloved Giants, although I still root for them to this day, even though I'm in Boston, and lucky to be here with my life after the last two Super Bowls. But if we go to the next slide, but it was the classic experience of migrating to find a better way. And I wound up taking that journey to the Valley. Obviously, Sergey Brin left Russia to head up Google. Jerry Yang left Taiwan to go to the Valley to have Yahoo. Pierre Omidyar to do eBay. It's a classic journey. Okay, and how many of you recognize this gentleman whose two parents who were engineers wound up in Silicon Valley? Now, you probably would recognize him more with the New York Knickerbockers number 17 on his chest, but this is our good friend Jeremy Lin. Okay, so the migration journey is a powerful one, and I'm a product of it, as many of you in the room are. Next slide. But as I observed the most recent recruiting season, it forced me to reflect a little bit. Okay, and obviously I saw that the next generation has the best of both worlds. So if we go to the next slide, Darius Hamilton, the most recruited, defensive lineman in the country. He was looking at going to Miami, and we're all very proud to know that he actually came to Rutgers. So the top recruit in the country, and certainly the best recruiting class we've ever had as a university. This guy doesn't have to make the trade-off. He gets to go to school in his home state, hang out with his family, hang out with his friends, and go to a great institution. So if we go to the next slide. New Jersey is known for a lot of things. And my son Zachary, I hesitate to say, actually watches Jersey Shore, God forbid, and allows these poor people to perpetuate season after season. Okay? But we're also known for this guy. And Terry, it was a pleasure having you here tonight. I have so much respect for Mr. Springsteen as an artist, as a performer, as a poet, and as a man, and as an activist. Okay? And thank God we're known for this guy. Keep going if you will. And more recently, in the first ever crowdsourced Moment of the Year in Sports Illustrated, and the remarkable courage and resilience of Eric LeGrand, we're known more for moments like this. And of course, anybody in the Canyon a few weeks ago knows that repeatedly we're known for this. But I ask you, there's one more build if you would, why not this? Okay? Why not this? And so if we go to the next slide, again, my message here tonight is really a message about not just entrepreneurship as I've known it for the last 20 years, entrepreneurship in building companies from a clean sheet of paper and trying to solve an unmet need in the market, but the entire mindset and philosophy of entrepreneurship and the way that we approach what we do. So increasingly we're seeing an open innovation culture. And it would also be remarkable if I wasn't able to say this, but Regina Dugan, who's the director of DARPA, has brought an open innovation culture to DARPA. Who would have ever guessed that one of the most classified environments in the world is relying more and more on outside innovation to drive the next generation of systems? IBM runs, IBM runs their Global Smart Camp. They're really trying to tap into the entrepreneurial creativity and energy around the world. One of my neighbors runs an innovation group for Procter & Gamble. And her message is, we can no longer rely on the big iconic incumbents. We can't do business anymore with the IBMs and the Hewlett-Packards, even though they're remarkable companies. And she spends her time traveling the globe, talking to entrepreneurs and venture capitalists everywhere around the world to be able to deliver the next level of competitive advantage that P&G needs to run their businesses. GE with their Eco-Imagination Channel. So there's such an incredible change in the way that we're doing business from the old not invented here syndrome that I was born into. Okay? All of these open innovation platforms, GrabCAD, a company that I had the privilege of mentoring, two Estonian mechanical engineers I had a chance to introduce to Alberto to, maybe bring more of an open design innovation culture into the senior design project. Now they've got the largest community of engineers in the world within a year. Okay? And every organization, whether it be an NGO, a nonprofit, or a foundation, more and more you're seeing an entrepreneurial mindset in the way that people are trying to do business. So we all remember what it was like just a few short years ago. This was the busiest place in town on a Friday or Saturday night. Now the one in my town is a dog store, right? They basically are a pet store. They sell pet food. So we know what disruptive innovation looks like. If you saw the paper today, Hewlett-Packard is seeing a huge decline in its business because it's the only product line that's been its saving grace for the last many years is its printer line. And because everyone is sharing their photographs on Facebook, that nobody needs to print out on their printers anymore their photographs. So there's no one in this room, I don't care what organization you're in, that is immune from the forces of creative destruction. It's happening quicker every single day. Okay? Every single industry is subjected to it. Okay? So here's an entrepreneur that I'm sure you all recognize. Facebook now has 800 million users. Americans spend about 100 billion minutes a month on Facebook, if you can even imagine that. But of course, it's okay when we lose engineers to Silicon Valley. We're going to see that happen forever. It is the center of our universe when it comes to software entrepreneurship. The fact that he's able to give $100 million to public schools in the city of Newark is a great thing. Okay? This is another gentleman who also left New Jersey, and although I doubt many people would recognize his face, he's had a remarkable impact on the world and as a mentor to me. So Bill Warner grew up in Millburn, New Jersey. He suffered a tragic accident when he was in his early childhood, and he's been paralyzed from the waist down ever since. Despite that, he has a phenomenally positive attitude. He has started 7 companies. The most noteworthy is a company called Avid. Avid is a company that today almost every Academy Award nominee that was put on the slate has used Avid for high-end video editing. Bill and his company won 2 Academy Awards, one in 1993 and 1997. He is a remarkable mentor and super angel and has a phenomenal impact on the lives of many, many countless entrepreneurs across the United States. He's somebody that it would have been great to have him stay here in New Jersey. Next slide. And some of you may recognize this young gentleman. He graduated from Rutgers in 2010, Eli Shopak. I got to meet Eli about a month ago. He was a dual finance and music major. He actually played on stage several times at Carnegie Hall, but he is now an entrepreneur. And he is an incredibly charismatic, energetic, and passionate young man, and he is bringing a completely revolutionary approach to the study for the SATs. Okay? And I have no doubt he will be very successful. Now, there are exceptions. Some of you may recognize this gentleman. Okay? Dr. Sal Barrer. Barrer was the founder and until recently the chair and CEO of Celgene. Faced phenomenal odds. They built a company with a $40 billion market cap and over $4 billion in revenue. They become one of the largest cancer drug providers in the world. Next slide, please. So over the last several years, I've had the privilege of being on the TED speaking circuit, and one of my customary talks has been around the entrepreneurial renaissance. And what I've tried to communicate is the similarity between what happened in Florence, Italy, back in the 1400s, with this remarkable transformation culturally, economically, educationally, and how much it propagated across the free world as we knew it at the time. We're seeing a similar entrepreneurial renaissance today in Silicon Valley, and for those of you who haven't really been following it that closely, I can tell you that if you thought the dot-com boom was a significant period of entrepreneurial energy, it's not even close to what we're seeing right now. Okay? So, my friend Mr. Springsteen is always working on a dream. Okay? And, you know, the quote here attributed to Springsteen, which I did get from Terry's website, and 2 of the best speeches I've ever seen ever in my life was when Springsteen was inducted into the Hall of Fame, and the way he thanked his band, and when he inducted Bono into the Hall of Fame. What a poet the man is. But the quote that he says there is exactly the same as any startup. If you can have your customers look at you and identify with you, and if you can identify with them, you've done something remarkable. So if we go to the next slide, you know, my dream, Bruce is working on a dream, I'm working on a dream as well. My dream is to see a New Jersey entrepreneurial renaissance that is driven by the engine that is the Rutgers School of Engineering. Okay? Engineers are naturally entrepreneurial creatures. There was a recent study on Facebook. They looked at 30,000 profiles. There was a 3-to-1 advantage of engineers over people with business degrees who were founders or co-founders, right? Engineers are problem solvers. Entrepreneurs are problem solvers. You put those 2 things together, it's an incredibly powerful formula. Okay? So it's a little bit tough to see this slide, but since we have such limited time, I want to focus on just a few examples. And a lot of these examples are around engineering for social good. Okay? There's a lot of activity. I've seen a massive increase in energy and investment in social engineering, if you will. I was inspired by the example of the Engineers Without Borders tonight. It's exactly aligned with what I want to talk about. Okay? I've been mentoring a team at MIT in the 100K entrepreneurship competition. The woman on the right, Diana, the woman in the middle, Basikil, and the woman on the left, Alex, have started a very interesting company. They're trying to target this insane amount of waste that is accumulating in countries across the emerging markets where they cannot move waste quickly enough, and it just continues to pile up in the streets. It destroys their dignity and it destroys their health. And so they came up with this remarkable design where a bicycle-powered vehicle will actually cycle through the streets. In this case, the pilot was done in Lagos, Nigeria. And you're actually powering the processing of these sorted recyclables, so you're able to sell premium recycled material to mid-market people that can then turn it into products. And they just wound up winning the MIT 100K Design Award. They won the wild card competition, and they were named #2 in the social venture track. And they're going to begin doing this work in Nigeria in the next few months. The next slide, I met this woman at a conference that Intel sponsored about a month ago. She's a woman out of New York City. Both of her parents are engineers. Although she is an economist and a political science major, she came up with this idea going back and forth, coincidentally, to Nigeria as well, that there was just so much despondency and so much poverty. How could she possibly help change things there? So she came up with this idea of uncharted play. And what Uncharted Play basically does is it recognizes that the way that most people in emerging markets light their homes is through kerosene lamps. Thank God none of us have that experience, at least I hope not. But what you might not know about kerosene lamps is it's as if you're smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. Okay? It's an insanely carcinogenic type of way to heat your house or light your house. So she's come up with the idea of creating a soccer ball, where when kids do what they normally do, they go out and play, and soccer, of course, is the international sport. They are actually generating energy that is stored in the soccer ball. And if you bring the soccer ball home at night, you can actually light the house for the evening using a soccer ball. Okay, now this woman does not have an engineering background, but she thinks like an engineer and she thinks like an entrepreneur, and she has figured this out. Okay? So all kinds of remarkable things that are being done by young folks today around engineering for social good. Okay? Other great examples. Okay, Stanford's Design for Extreme Poverty course. A recent competition at Dartmouth, the $300 home. They had their first winners, and they're just about to go into production, both in urban and rural environments. Just a remarkable amount of innovation that's happening on this front today. Next slide. I want to just shift to the healthcare space. Gentleman that I've had the privilege of serving on the board of for the last couple of years, Chad Monroe, another guy that wasn't willing to make a compromise. He lives out in the middle of nowhere in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. Okay? Because of his love for his homeland, he's decided to build his global company from there. He is committed to bringing transparency and quality control to the orthopedic implant market. Some of you in the room may have had an implant by now. For those of you who have had a defective implant, I don't have to tell you about the pain and suffering and misery. We've seen a lot of recalls recently, including the Dupuy recall of about 500,000 hip implant parts. Chad is going to be providing technology to the U.S. registry and the California registry, so that every time an implant is made, they are tracking the movement of that implant to be able to determine whether or not that implant is actually going to be able to be successful long-term in the body. And this is something that Chad has gone to the well on. He's faced personal bankruptcy innumerable times. He is going to do this unless it kills him, and I am absolutely sure he's going to do this. Next slide, please. And in deference to my friend Mr. Stewart, not everybody has to design tangible goods. And so in the world of music, a world that I have a lot of passion for, a lot of entrepreneurial energy now going into this industry as well. Terry did a great job of educating us on the industry, but we all know the disruptive innovation has taken place in that world and the challenges that so many artists have to connect with their audiences. You're seeing a lot more opportunities for musicians to bring their passion for their craft into places like, and here, Marcato, delivering entrepreneurial software that allows musicians to connect with their user base. And in this instance, a company out of Boulder, Colorado, the Techstars program, where they're helping musicians understand the impact of social media and how they're able to get to their audience. Next slide. I want to make a special, very, very strong note for women in the room. You know, and I know that when Terry got up, he talked about the fact that there were very few women in his class. I can remember the one woman in my class when I graduated, Grace Pace, literally one woman engineer graduating in our cohort. That has changed remarkably. And the number of women today that are starting technology companies as founders and as CEOs is dramatically different. So Heather Stroll on the right started a company called Stroll Medical. It's EKG for the brain, for stroke. And so if you're going through stroke symptoms, they can very rapidly diagnose whether you're actually in need of the appropriate pharmaceuticals, and they will triage you and get you to the right room and get you the right drugs. The woman in the middle, Travania Henderson, has come up with software that allows people with chronic and acute problems that are in long-term care or at home being cared for by family members to allow for appropriate handoff between professional caregivers and family members so nobody drops the ball on getting someone the medication or the therapy they need. Next slide. Okay. The bottom line, though, is that the bar has been raised on venturing. I've been in this business now. I left Rutgers, it's hard to believe, 29 years ago. Okay. I've been an entrepreneur for about 24 of those 29 years. And the last 3 or 4 years, I've seen more change than the first 25 years combined. Okay. So what kind of changes are we seeing? Please. More and more a celebration of student venturing, younger and younger. Okay? So Rutgers has some great foundational elements, of course. There's a lot of activity on campus. I love the story tonight of the Engineering Without Boundaries. It's a very, very important thing to go into the field and be able to work on problems like that. But I want to point out other opportunities that we can think about bring a much more rich entrepreneurial training experience to engineers at Rutgers. Okay? And to be able to punch above our weight class with the resources that we have. Next slide. Right. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about is leverage. I'm not here suggesting we compete with MIT or Stanford today. That's not a realistic goal. Right? Those are institutions with histories that go back literally in some cases 150 years. But there's huge opportunity to take it to the next level. Okay? We're seeing young entrepreneurs trained. Some of you may have seen that the G20 summit most recently began focusing on entrepreneurial endeavors as a way to try to fill the gap with the lack of job growth that we're seeing around the world. And so there's this huge effort to train high school students around entrepreneurship. The Indus Entrepreneurs, a group I've proudly been a charter member of for a long time. For those of you who don't know, it's the world's largest entrepreneurial organization. It started as an organization to bring together the diaspora of Indian immigrants, both in Silicon Valley and Boston. But they've now started the Thai Young Entrepreneurs Competition, where they actually have freshmen and sophomores from high school competing and collaborating with university researchers and getting in front of ballrooms of 1,000 people and giving amazingly impassioned, eloquent presentations. Okay, so kids are getting the access to this stuff younger and younger. Next slide. Okay, there's been an explosion of business plan competitions, and the financial rewards get higher. Most of these now are offering $100,000 and more. But much more importantly, what they're offering is the mentorship, the long-standing mentorship that goes well beyond the check. Because a lot of young entrepreneurs won't know what to do with the money if they're not being mentored. A lot of you thanked your mentors tonight. Right? Mentorship is the rocket fuel for successful entrepreneurs. Next slide. Okay. We've seen new and ambitious engineering school collaborations. Of course, the Technion-Cornell collaboration on Roosevelt Island. There's a lot more activity still to probably be announced. And there's more and more opportunities to collaborate over time. Okay? The democratization of education. I've long been affiliated with MIT, first as a senior faculty member and as a judge. And what they've done is they've pioneered open education. So every MIT course is online. Recently, they introduced a new concept called MITx. MITx is basically a certificate or badging program. Some of you may have seen that the MacArthur Foundation, in conjunction with the Mozilla organization, are now generating badges as a way to distinguish certain skills. Right? So just another disruption in the educational continuum, just as we've seen the Khan Academy for elementary and high school students, and the story goes on and on. So this is just one example of an MIT basic electrical engineering course taught by a fairly legendary professor, Professor Agarwal, a circuit course being offered outside of the mainstream four-year degree program, now being offered online for a very nominal cost with a certificate to be given. Okay, next slide. So some lessons learned. Okay. It's not just about the business plan. Too many entrepreneurial courses ask students to spend an entire semester writing a perfect 40-page business plan. It's not about the idea. The idea, unfortunately, is about 1% of the success of the venture. Next slide. Okay. It's really, again, as I started off, about the passion. I borrow shamelessly from James Collins here. Okay? The principle of the hedgehog. It's that perfect symmetry across this diagram. What are you passionate about? When I sit down across from entrepreneurs that I want to mentor or invest in or join the boards of, when the entrepreneur says, I know it's a big market and I know I can make a lot of money, I am completely turned off. But when I can see the fire in their eyes and I know that this is something that they will not rest until they get it done, that's the kind of entrepreneur I want to work with. Next slide. Okay. For those of us engineers in the room, of course, it's difficult, but God forbid we fall in love with our technology. I remember when I joined Hewlett-Packard, we had a far better solution than digital did at the time, and it staggered me that many of our customers still decided to go with DEC in the early days of my time with Hewlett-Packard. Right? They were making very practical decisions, taking a much more holistic view of the process than we as engineers. All we saw was our product. We were unable to put ourselves in the shoes of our customers. Okay? So falling in love with your technology is a recipe for disaster. You've got to have the empathy and the humility to understand how your customer perceives the world and how you fit into that world. Okay? Otherwise, it's like this guy, Mr. Sisyphus. He's just pushing that rock uphill. And most startups that fail do it because they're chasing the wrong end of the tail. Next slide. Okay? So last section here, some additional changes that I think we can see, please. Okay? When I started off in this business, you had to raise significant amounts of venture capital. Venture capitalists were kingmakers. If they decided to invest with you, it was like winning the lottery. The odds were staggeringly against you, but if you raised institutional venture capital, you had a real chance of success. Since the financial crisis of 2007, the balance of power has shifted. A lot of these firms are laying off partners, they're closing down, they're struggling to raise capital. And so the way that we start companies today is by taking some of James Womack's lean manufacturing concepts and applying them to young startups. Okay? And basically the concept of the lean startup is king today. Do just as little as you need to do to validate your product in the market, use as little capital as you can, hire as few employees as you can, until you are absolutely certain that you have hit a harmonic resonance need in the marketplace and the market is ready for you. And only then do you go out and raise capital. Okay? So you succeed by failing fast. And that's really what we try to do, is we work with young entrepreneurs today. We push them to hit walls and fail fast so they're able to figure out what the customer really wants. Okay? And so the acronym or the mantra today is think big. Right? We're not going to work with entrepreneurs that are not ambitious, but at the same time, we want them to be realistic in how they get started. So start small and grow fast. Okay? Increasingly democratized sources of capital. Kickstarter. Kickstarter is an online site that anybody in the room can go and pitch your idea, create a video, and you can raise money from individuals for the first time. There's an act before Congress that Senator Brown from Massachusetts has put forward called the Democratization of Capital Act. It's going to allow individuals, everyone in this room, to invest $1,000 a year in startups, okay, to take away the gatekeeper. Okay? And finally, mentor capital programs. Mentor capital programs are the next wave of entrepreneurship and innovation. What we're seeing today is that we're getting companies launched in 90 days. What mentor capital programs do is they bring a lot of experienced entrepreneurs to a city, to a region, and you typically go through a very competitive application process where 8 or 10 teams are selected, and they're given 90 days of intensive mentoring by a group of experienced entrepreneurs. The success rates coming out of these programs are remarkable. We're seeing in some of the top programs, 80, 90, or 100% of the companies are getting funded coming out of these programs. Nothing like it's ever been in the past. Okay? Just a couple of examples of some accelerators that focus on engineering design. One of them is the accelerator in Providence, Rhode Island that Eli Scheitpak, the Rutgers musician that I spoke about earlier, is now incubating at. It's called Beta Spring. And this is an example of a company called New Label. New Label was attacking a problem from their Brown University senior design project. And they were asked to basically challenge the way that labels are printed for high-volume manufacturers and retailers like Walmart, FedEx, UPS. About half of the size of the roll is wasted, half of the cost is wasted. They were able to go back and re-engineer the entire process by making these adhesive activable products, and they were able to bolt them onto existing laser printers and label printers, and they've now got the top customers in the world on board. They've just raised $5 million in venture capital. Next slide. A company called Green Goose that is trying to bring an online gaming experience to kids to help them have a better daily experience at managing healthy habits, so it's a way to keep harmony in the house. So they were able to squeeze a microprocessor, a wireless chip, an accelerometer, and a battery onto something the size of 2 postage stamps. And they actually put those on everyday items like toothbrushes and hairbrushes and dog collars. So if you're walking your dog, or if you're brushing your teeth, or if you're exercising, you're getting online points and you're competing with your siblings or competing with your friends. So they brought the world of the internet to life. Next slide, please. So Green Goose, the company I just referred to, went on stage at the biggest launch conference in Silicon Valley, walked off the stage with a $500,000 check in about 3 minutes for what they're doing. That's the level of appreciation that entrepreneurs going through these accelerators are getting today. Next slide. So what does that mean for the rest of us in the audience? Okay? And what does it mean for Rutgers? Again, we can't follow the patterns of MIT or Stanford. We've got to play our own game. And we can learn from our friend Billy Beane, the guy that figured out that he couldn't compete with the payroll of the Yankees and some of the other teams in the American League. He had to play his own game, which is how Moneyball was formed. So I'm going to ask you to advance one slide. So what are some of the strengths that we can draw upon? And I realize we only have a minute or two left, so I'm going to only highlight one. Great opportunity. There's such a fallacy about the lack of prowess of American manufacturing. Okay? American manufacturing is still very healthy and very strong. American manufacturing today would be the 8th largest economy in the world if it was a standalone country. Okay? Our productivity has increased 4x since World War II. Okay? That's way more than any other industry that we know. Okay? It still comprises over 10% of U.S. employment. There's a real opportunity as manufacturing comes back to the States to have Rutgers play a leadership role in driving manufacturing through the entrepreneurial world. Next slide. Okay. The second thing is to recognize that you're near 2 of the 3 largest risk capital markets in the world. New York City a few years ago had no real venture capital for technology and engineering. Today it's very quickly become the number 3 market in the country behind Boston. So your proximity to 2 of these 3 key capital markets I think is a real advantage. Next slide. So I want to once again thank Tom, Kendra, and Lydia for a great event tonight. I want to thank you for this great award. And I'd love to be available to make myself involved in any way possible to help Tom and Rutgers as you think about taking entrepreneurship to the next step on campus. Thank you.